Keyword selection and optimization. Can you provide a list of keywords or topics that are relevant to the prompt? Can you recommend a good Italian restaurant in the area? And you can change that, can you recommend a good Italian restaurant in the area, to any prompt if you want to find out what sort of parameters ChatGPT would understand. Absolute key. The keywords are everything. So the better you can understand what the keywords are, the better you can change them and utilize them to get the absolute best out of your prompts. This is perhaps the most important part of the course. All you have to do is to understand what the keywords are. So the keywords are what ChatGPT understands in relation to a particular query. Then you have to provide as much context as possible related to those keywords. From there, all of your prompts will flow smoothly. To do this, all we have to do is ask ChatGPT what keywords or parameters it understands for a particular type of query. So you can use the prompt I said at the beginning of this lesson, or something like, what are the relevant entity types for type of query? Or you can try, what are the most common features users mention for type of query? This will give you sort of a wider context to put into ChatGPT. So I said the absolute key is to understand these keywords and add that context, but we have to understand that the keywords in the actual system itself are so much wider than for an individual query that there's almost like two types of contexts. So there's one type of context that is 100% relevant to the keywords, and then there's another type of context that is more relevant to the entire model. And that secondary context has a lot to do with format. So one of the really big things that you can do with your prompts is you can say, okay, I want this output in markdown format in code blocks. And that's something I use a lot, not just for programming, but for marketing as well, because there's a copy and paste button at the top. So if you want to get all of your information into a code block, it's going to be way easier to copy and paste. And I just know in like 5 years, I'm going to look back at this and like cringe so hard, because like this is such an easy thing to solve, like making things easier to copy and paste, that I'm sure, I hope that that's a very, very soon fix. So back to getting the context. Here are a couple tips to help you with that. Number one, use technical language. ChatGPT understands virtually all technical language and industry jargon, so don't be afraid to use it when prompting it for your keywords and parameters and for filling out these keywords and parameters. Number two, provide context to both the keywords and to the model itself. The keywords will help you get better information, and the model itself will help to format that information. Quick example, if we were writing a JavaScript app, we would want to be very specific. This is related to the keywords about what library, what the functionality, performance considerations are, and we can be very literal when we're speaking that into ChatGPT. For the model-wide context, we can say exactly how we want that output. So we could say, only output code, no words that are not code. Here's a key point. So I'm just speaking this prompt, and that sort of reiteration where I say only code and nothing that isn't code, that's something that makes sense in the human mind but is not needed for the model. So provide answers only in code, always use a code block, and use markdown format when necessary. And for the model-wide context, we could say only give me replies in code blocks. Final tip. Evaluate the response. We can sit here all day and talk about, oh, I'm providing this perfect context for these keywords that ChatGPT told me were the type of keywords for this prompt. But at the end of the day, you have to put it into the model and check it. Perfect example. One thing that we teach through Machine Minds is how to write songs, basically prompt engineering for songwriters. And in the 3.5 turbo model, the model will tell you all day, like, yeah, I can write you a specific number of verses, I can do these rhyme schemes, but in practice, it doesn't do very well. Versus if we test the same prompts in ChatGPT-4, it works a lot better. So not only do we have to talk with ChatGPT, figure out as much as we can about the parameters, and don't just trust ChatGPT with the parameters it tells you. Try them. Test them out, like change a few of the parameters. If ChatGPT tells you that for programming, this parameter of code complexity needs to be there, well, that's actually one that it did give and actually one that we use in Kogo. Test whether or not that actually has a measurable impact on your code. So change it to be simple complexity versus highly complex, and see if the differences in the responses are enough that you want to target that keyword. Because at the end of the day, once you get to the F1 racing of all of this, it does come down to performance, and we don't want to be using keywords that aren't affecting the bottom line, that aren't giving us better prompts, even if ChatGPT swears up and down that this is a great keyword to use. In conclusion, by using technical language and providing context not just for the keywords, but also for the model itself, you can get more accurate and relevant responses. But you're still going to need to test those. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about testing and refining prompts.